You know how people say that motherhood shows you who really has your back? Well, I found out the hard way in the middle of a sleepless night, holding a crying newborn, while my husband's mother tried to evict us from our own lives. My name's Lila, and this is the story of how my maternity leave turned into a battle, not just to raise my daughter, but to protect my sanity, my marriage, and my home. Let's rewind a little. Before the baby came, I was the one holding everything together. Bills? I paid them. Groceries? I handled it. My husband Jonah worked, but I made more, so we agreed I'd cover most of the expenses until I took my leave. That included, unfortunately, paying the rent for his mother, Sharon. Why? Because she was between jobs. Because she had nowhere else to go. Because, according to Jonah, it's just temporary. Right. It had been almost 2 years. Every month, like clockwork, I transferred money to cover Sharon's apartment. She never said thank you. Never asked if we were okay. Just sent a passive-aggressive emoji if I was a day late. But then my daughter, Rin, was born, and everything changed. I was exhausted, bleeding, barely sleeping, and suddenly, our finances were tighter than ever. Formula, diapers, doctor visits, it added up fast. So I did something radical. I stopped paying Sharon's rent. Not out of spite, not out of vengeance, but because I literally couldn't afford to anymore. And that's when the war began. The first text came 2 days after rent was due. Is there a problem with the transfer? Rent's late. No, hope the baby's okay. No, congrats on surviving your first month as a mom. Just entitlement, wrapped in entitlement. I replied, politely but firmly, we've had to reassess our expenses while I'm on leave. I'm sorry, but we can't continue covering your rent. She didn't respond for 5 hours. Then all hell broke loose. Excuse me? After everything I've done for Jonah? I sacrificed for him. I gave him life. And now you're telling me I'm just cut OFF like some freeloader? I showed Jonah the messages, expecting him to step up. Instead, he sighed. She's just stressed. She'll calm down. I stared at him. We have $320 left for groceries this week, Jonah. He blinked. Maybe she could move in, just until she finds a place. That was the moment I knew. I was not just fighting exhaustion, sleep deprivation, and hormones. I was fighting to keep my child safe from generational toxicity wrapped in guilt. And I wasn't about to back down. A week passed. During that week, Sharon called Jonah every day, sometimes twice. Once, she even accidentally FaceTimed him while sobbing conveniently as I walked by. She says she might get evicted, Jonah told me, rubbing his temple. She's scared. I raised an eyebrow. She's scared? I haven't showered in 3 days and Rin spit up on my last clean shirt. I'm terrified. He didn't laugh. He didn't say anything. Instead, he did what he always did, tried to smooth things over. She's asking if we can just cover this month. One more time. I exploded. One more time? Like the one more time last year? Or the one more time the month before that? She's a grown woman, Jonah. We have a baby. We don't owe her comfort at the cost of our survival. He sulked. Sharon, meanwhile, switched tactics. She sent me a long message about how hard it is to be a single mother, how no one helped her, how she sacrificed her happiness so Jonah could thrive. And now, apparently, I was trying to erase her from her son's life. I almost laughed. Erase her? The woman who practically invited herself into our wedding planning? The woman who gave Jonah a framed photo of her holding him as a baby to display in our living room? No, Sharon was not erased. She was overexposed. And I was done letting guilt write checks we couldn't cash. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday. The fridge was nearly empty. I'd stretched every coupon, every dollar. Our daughter needed formula, and I was debating whether to use the emergency credit card again. Jonah came home with takeout. Takeout. I stared at the greasy bag and felt something inside me snap. We're broke, Jonah, I whispered. We're living off my maternity benefits and a thread of hope. And you bought pad thai? He froze. I thought it might help cheer you up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I packed up Rin, grabbed the diaper bag, and went to stay with my friend Elise for the weekend. Elise didn't judge. She handed me tea, let me sleep while she held Rin, and listened as I poured everything out, the rent payments, the emotional blackmail, the feeling that I was drowning in everyone else's needs but my own. You are not selfish, she said. You're exhausted. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to protect your peace. Something shifted inside me. She was right. I'd been trying so hard to be the good wife, the understanding daughter-in-law, the woman who holds everything together. But maybe what I needed to be was free. Free from guilt. free from Sharon's dependency, free to raise my daughter in a home that didn't feel like a battlefield. That weekend, I made a decision. When I came back home on Sunday evening, Jonah was sitting on the couch like a scolded child. There were dishes in the sink, laundry half done. He looked like he hadn't slept, and for the first time, I didn't feel sorry. "We need to talk," I said. He nodded. I didn't yell. I didn't raise my voice. But I was clear. This isn't working. I can't be a mother to our child and a mother to your mother. I won't be. He opened his mouth, closed it. "She called me 6 times today," he muttered. "Said she might have to live in her car." I shrugged. "That's her problem, Jonah. Not mine. Not ours." "But," I stopped him with a look, "I will not sacrifice our daughter's safety, our peace, or my mental health for a woman who's made me feel like a villain for breathing." He didn't argue again. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, because even though everything wasn't fixed, I had finally chosen myself. I had drawn the line, and I meant it. The next week, Sharon posted a dramatic rant on Facebook. No names, of course, just vague references. Some people forget the hands that raised their husbands. Sad to see how easily loyalty is tossed aside. I guess I'll learn how to be homeless now. The comments rolled in, sympathy, offers of couches to crash on, even someone suggesting a GoFundMe. It was all performative. What she didn't post. The years we paid her rent. The months I went without new clothes just to send her extra. The fact that she'd never once asked how I was coping after giving birth. I could have clapped back, could have dropped receipts, but I didn't. I didn't need to defend myself to strangers online, because truth doesn't require applause. Instead, I blocked her. Digitally. Emotionally. Completely. Jonah wasn't thrilled, but he didn't stop me. And that silence? It was the loudest support he'd given me in months. Life after that was quieter. Not easy. Not instantly perfect. But quieter. I learned how to breathe again. I learned how to take naps when Ren napped, instead of worrying what emotional grenade Sharon would throw next. Jonah and I went to counseling. It wasn't a magic fix, but it opened doors. Hard conversations were had. Tears were shed. Apologies, too, the real kind. He finally admitted he had spent his life being parentified, carrying his mother's emotions on his back like unpaid rent. And now, unknowingly, he'd tried to hand some of that burden to me. "I thought love meant fixing everything," he whispered once. "But I never fixed anything. I just shifted the weight." I forgave him, because I knew what it meant to carry too much for too long. One day, we went to the park. Just me, Jonah, and Ren. We sat under a tree and watched her giggle as the wind tossed leaves across her blanket. It was nothing. It was everything. And for the first time, our little family didn't feel like it was missing anything. Because peace, real peace, doesn't come from pleasing everyone. It comes from choosing who deserves your energy. And Sharon? She no longer did. A letter I never sent, but once drafted in my head while nursing Ren at 3 a.m. "Dear Sharon, you think I wronged you. You think I'm the reason your world shifted, that your son drifted, that your rent went unpaid. But here's the truth. You were never my responsibility. Not then. Not now. I gave and gave, not because I owed you, but because I loved Jonah. I wanted to support his world. But your world kept taking and never once asked how mine was holding up. You never saw me as family. You saw me as a resource. And that's not love. That's convenience. I don't hate you, but I won't enable you anymore. I'm a mother now too, and I will not teach my daughter that love means sacrificing your worth. Goodbye, Lila." Sometimes, I think about what I'll tell Ren when she's older, when she asks about boundaries, about family, about what it means to say no, even when the world calls you cruel for it. I'll tell her this. That love without limits becomes burden. That helping someone isn't the same as losing yourself. That sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is stop apologizing. I'll tell her about strength, the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't post on Facebook. The kind that holds a baby in one arm and builds a new life with the other. And maybe, one day, she'll be strong enough to walk away too. Not from love, but from anything pretending to be love while draining her dry. She'll know her worth. Because I finally know mine. And I will never hand that power away again. This story doesn't end with reconciliation. There was no tearful reunion. No magical fix. Just choices. Some of them painful, but all of them mine. And maybe that's the most powerful thing I gained. Not just the peace, not just the clarity, but the ownership. I rewrote the ending. And this time, I made myself the main character. Before Rin was even a dream, there was just Jonah and me, two people trying to build a life from secondhand furniture and weekend takeout. We met in college. Fell hard, fast, like cliches written in cafeteria coffee and midnight library sessions. I loved him for his calm, his steadiness. He said I made him believe in mornings again. But the first time I met his mother, I felt something shift. She smiled too wide, gripped my hand too long, said, "I hope you're not planning to take him away from me." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Sharon didn't like sharing Jonah. Not with friends. Not with dreams. And certainly not with the woman he eventually proposed to. Every holiday became a negotiation. Every milestone, a stage for her drama. When we got our first apartment together, she cried. "I always thought you'd stay close," she sniffled. "It's just so sudden." We moved 20 minutes away. And when Jonah suggested helping with her rent after she lost her job, I agreed. It was supposed to be temporary. A few months. But Sharon doesn't do temporary. She does dependency. And I was too polite, too naive to say no. Until now. When I got pregnant, I thought things would change. I thought maybe Sharon would soften. That she'd see me not just as the woman who took her son, but as the mother of her grandchild. The woman bringing new life into the family. But instead of warmth, I got critiques. "You're showing too early. Must be all that takeout." You know, I was on my feet until the day Jonah was born. "Why aren't you glowing?" I glowed the entire third trimester. I started dreading her visits. The way she'd touch my belly without asking. The constant unsolicited advice. The way she referred to Rin as her baby. Not our baby. Not my daughter. Her baby. And Jonah? He brushed it off. She means well. She's just excited. But it didn't feel like excitement. It felt like erasure. When I was on bed rest in my 7th month, she actually called Jonah crying because I hadn't responded to her text fast enough. "She doesn't like me," she sobbed. "I don't feel welcome." I was literally trying to keep our baby alive. And she made it about her. That was when I started counting the days, not to my due date, but to my freedom. Rin arrived on a rainy Tuesday night. 10 fingers. 10 toes. A scream that filled the room and cracked something inside me open. I loved her instantly. And I was also terrified. No one tells you how loud the silence can feel at 3 a.m. when you're the only one awake, bleeding and aching, trying to latch a newborn who won't stop crying. Jonah tried. In his way. He changed diapers. Held her while I showered. But he didn't see me unraveling. Didn't see me staring at the wall for hours, scared to move. Sharon, of course, wanted to visit immediately. I said no. She called Jonah, furious. "I'm her grandmother. I have a right." No. She sent a basket of baby clothes, all pink, all frilly, all marked Grandma's Girl. No note. No warmth. Just branding. When Jonah finally confronted her, she cried again. "I'm just trying to be part of this family." But it never felt like she wanted to be part of anything. She wanted to own it. And that included our daughter. That included me. And that's when I knew, if I didn't fight for boundaries now, I'd lose myself completely. It wasn't until I told Elise, truly told her, that I realized how much I'd buried. We were sitting on her porch, Rin asleep in the sling across my chest, a cup of tea cooling in my hands. She makes me feel like I'm failing, I admitted. Like I'm not enough. Elise blinked. Failing who? Jonah. The baby. Her. Myself. She set her cup down gently. "Lila," she said, "you're raising a human. While bleeding. While broke. While being emotionally mugged every other day. You're not failing. You're surviving." I started to cry. Not because I was sad, but because someone finally saw me. Not as a villain. Not as an ATM. Not as an obstacle. As a person. That night, I wrote a list on my phone. Things I owe Sharon asterisk. Respect? Earned. Support? Temporary. Rent? No. My peace? Never again. It was short, but it was everything I needed to remember. A year later, our lives looked completely different. We moved to a smaller place. One we could afford without stretching every cent. It's cozy. The light hits the kitchen just right in the morning. Sharon hasn't been in it. Jonah visits her sometimes. Not often. Their conversations are shorter now. Less explosive. He tells me he's learning how to talk to her, not obey her. I'm proud of him. And I'm proud of me. I went back to work part-time. I found a rhythm with Rin, dance parties in the kitchen, long walks after naps, reading books with silly voices. Sometimes I still feel guilty. But guilt is quieter now. Like a song I used to know the words to, but can't quite remember. I see Sharon's name pop up on social media sometimes. New posts. New digs at ungrateful daughters-in-law and sons lost to manipulative women. But they don't sting anymore. Because I know the truth. And more importantly, I know who I am. Not just a wife. Not just a mother. But a woman who said, enough. And meant it. We took our first family trip when Rin turned one. Just the three of us. No itinerary, no drama. No passive-aggressive texts about who got invited and who didn't. We drove upstate. Stayed in a tiny cottage near a lake. Rin saw ducks for the first time and tried to feed them half her sandwich. I watched Jonah push her stroller along a dirt path, the sun hitting his face just right, and I felt light. A year ago, I couldn't imagine this feeling. Because everything had strings. Sharon was the string. Every decision, every plan, had to account for her reactions, like she was some unstable planet we all orbited around, praying she didn't go supernova. But this was orbiting each other, choosing joy, not guilt. And I realized that peace isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just ducks and sandwiches. Looking back, maybe the signs were always there. Even on our wedding day. She wore white. Not cream. Not beige. White. She claimed it was ivory, but the photos say otherwise. She gave a toast that somehow became all about her, how hard it had been raising Jonah alone, how she never thought anyone would be good enough for her baby boy, and how she was still adjusting. I smiled through it. Everyone did. That's what we do at weddings. We let weird things slide because there's cake and dancing. But I remember the way Jonah looked at her afterward. Not annoyed. Guilty. Like her discomfort mattered more than our joy. That should have been my first red flag. Instead, it became a pattern. Until I finally folded the flag and walked away. Sometimes I wonder if Sharon will show up again. An apology. A letter. A knock on the door. Maybe she'll say she's changed. Maybe she'll cry again. Maybe she'll weaponize age and loneliness. But I know what I'll say. I wish you well, but I choose peace. Because some lessons don't need repeating. And some doors, once closed, stay that way not out of hate, but out of healing. The first real fight I had with Sharon wasn't even about money. It was about curtains. We just moved into our apartment. Jonah and I were hanging up navy blue blackout drapes in the bedroom when Sharon stopped by uninvited. "These are too dark," she said. "They'll depress him." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. She pulled the rod halfway off the wall, trying to tug them down. Jonah stood there, torn between us. "Mom," he said, "they already drilled into the studs." "Then undrill them," she snapped. It sounds ridiculous now, but at the time, it rattled me. The idea that she could just walk into our space and rearrange things literally and emotionally because she didn't like them. That was her pattern. If she didn't approve, it didn't belong. If she wasn't in control, she'd find a way back into the driver's seat. I didn't know then how much that dynamic would spiral, but I never forgot the curtains. If I could sit down with the version of me from 2 years ago, tired, hopeful, slowly unraveling, I'd tell her this. You will be okay. You will lose people who once felt permanent. You will face guilt so thick it chokes you in your sleep. You will cry while folding baby clothes and scream silently in the shower. But one day, the fog will lift. One day, your daughter will laugh, and it will sound like sunlight. One day, you'll look at your reflection and recognize her again. One day, you will make a choice, not for survival, but for joy. And that day will be yours alone. Own it. And here's the truth I now carry with me, not in bitterness, but in clarity. Family isn't defined by shared blood or forced duty. It's defined by presence, by care, by respect that flows in both directions. I used to believe that being a good daughter-in-law meant sacrificing parts of myself, that the quieter I became, the more peaceful things would feel. But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's submission. And I'm not raising my daughter to believe that love requires silence. I'm raising her to speak, to stand, to step away if she must. Because strength isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a boundary whispered through a locked door. Sometimes, it's choosing not to answer a call. Sometimes, it's a mother holding her child and saying, "This is enough. You are enough. And so am I." So if you're reading this, wondering if you're allowed to say no, you are. You always were.